I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, June the 16th, brought to you in part by Livestock Risk Services. We talk about them all the time. You know, they're one of the professionals that have a lot of experience in these LRPs. And they're the deal, guys. I was talking to somebody on Wednesday that had heard me mention LRPs. He looked into it. He's got his yearling steers guaranteed at 182. And the market's recovering. I mean, might possibly have a chance of getting there, but he hasn't sweated it a bit ever since he turned them out. And that's what you guys can assure yourselves is just peace of mind. You don't have to worry about it so much. Don't have to have a square load. Don't have to be steers. They could be heifers. Don't have to have certain weights of them. You can just go in there and select what you need. It also is for you guys that's got cattle on feed. You don't have to take a position on the board, get into something where you might have some margin calls or something like that. You don't have to do it. And even for you cow-calf producers, what do you think that calf's going to be worth when you normally sell that calf? You can go in there and protect yourself against those. But go to livestockriskservices.com or call one of these numbers here on the screen to visit with some people that have experience in that. Heat losses mount. And I don't know what it is, but since we first started talking about that, and I mentioned it early in the week, I think on our first report of the week, I mentioned that we had several losses of feedlot cattle in southwest Kansas due to the extreme heat over last weekend. And initially, we thought it was just kind of concentrated into a few feedlots there. Kind of ground zero was Ulysses, Kansas. Maybe 300 to 500 head in a yard or two, and then a few other yards around. Well, we're starting to see it mount. Nobody wants to talk about losing a lot of cattle, but we've seen that it's more than that. And initially, we thought it might be around 10,000 head that were lost over the weekend, last weekend, and now we're thinking it's probably closer to 25,000. And that's more significant. Don't know exactly how significant. You know, when it gets really, really hot this time of year, just like when we have a bad winter storm, it's not that big of a deal for any of those big commercial feedlots to lose, 30 to 50 head in a day's time, or in a storm's time, or in a couple of days of heat or something like that. It wouldn't be a big deal. But it is a big deal when you start losing hundreds of them in one lot. And we're finding out that it was worse than what we thought. Of course, some of them probably drug on there for a few days, and we're seeing the losses now. But there were a few lots in southwest Kansas that lost a lot of cattle, hundreds of cattle, up to 1,000 head. And then there were several lots around the area that might have lost 200 to 300 head. So we're thinking it's probably closer to 25,000. But had a lot of questions about that, and then on social media, and then you get people that don't really understand what they're talking about, and they're almost thinking that it's like a conspiracy deal or something. What really happened to those cattle? Were they out of water, or did they get contaminated somehow, or this or that? There's no conspiracy on it. When it's 107 degrees, you've got humidity, and then you've got excess humidity in those lots because you had a significant rain a couple of days before. So the pens are muddy. You've got 107 degree heat with the sun blaring down on you, and uncharacteristically in southwest Kansas, you don't have any breeze or any wind at all, and those pens are like saunas, and it's unbearable for the cattle. It would be unbearable for anything. And that there's nothing more to it than that. It happens. Shit happens sometimes, and it did happen to those cattle. It's a bad deal, but sometimes it happens. But I'm not sure what people are getting at, thinking that what really happened to those cattle. They died. They perished in the heat, and it was unbearable for them. And most of the cattle that we saw that died, and that video has kind of gone viral. I think everybody's seen the video out of that Ulysses area yard there where they were driving by, and there were just hundreds and hundreds of cattle. And if you look, most all of them were black, and I'd heard most of your lots, they were mostly black. Well, when you wear a black shirt out on a hot day, you're going to be a lot hotter than the guy wearing a white shirt or the cream colored shirt or something like that, or the shirt with long ears or leather hanging down and can get a little bit of coolness out of it. But you know, it was likely mostly your pure English black cattle there that perished in that heat, and likely those cattle were not running with a big enough radiator to offset how big they've gotten, and that's what happens when we see that. You know, cattle are not equipped to weigh 1,600 pounds. We've got good genetics, but we can't make their lungs bigger, and we can't equip them to live in unbearable conditions whenever they're as big as they are. They're bigger than what God intended for them to be, likely. So, and that's the reason, why we get these big calves that have grown in their body weight bigger than their internal organs have grown, and they can't withstand some of these infections that they get. That's just the nature of the beast. Whenever we do line breeding and we roll and keep improving the genetics, we don't really let the animal itself, you know, grow into all that. And we get into those deals, but there was no conspiracy on it. You know, that's what they do at those feedlots, is they take care of the cattle. They feed them. They're selling feed installed. They take really good care of those cattle, and they supply them with fresh water. But sometimes when the conditions get unbearable, it just happens. And you know, I never said, well, why didn't they have shades in there? Well, you know, whenever you've got a big commercial feedlot like that in a place where the wind usually blows all the time, most of them are not set up with shades. Some places are set up with shades. Those shades work pretty good until you get a big ice storm or a heavy snow, and then the shades come down, and likely there'll be cattle under the shades when that happens. But you know, it's nobody's fault. It's just Mother Nature, and sometimes that deal happens. Now, the futures traders likely have been able to tally all this information, and they think, well, maybe that is bullish the market. Well, hell yeah, it is. And most all those cattle that died from the heat were the ones that were close to being finished, you know, and then they're hungry for those cattle because there's not many cattle out there. So yeah, it's bullish. The market is bad for those cattle, bad for the owners of those cattle. Hate to see cattle suffer and perish anytime. I mean, nobody wants that to happen to their cattle. They take care of cattle for a living, and they love cattle probably more than they love the cattle business, or they wouldn't be in the business at all. But we saw your board come back really strong on Wednesday. Your Packers are very aggressive as I've seen them for years. Right now, this week, you know, everybody's looking, and your regional Packers they don't have as much of their needs filled. They don't have the sweetheart deals that your big four have. So they're out there trying to fill their needs. Well, they want the best cattle, of course, and they're willing to pay for them. But it's muddying up the water, and they're getting into, you know, your big fours kitty there, and they're not liking it very good. They're having to bid more to get some finished cattle, and we've got the calves on the market right now. Weights are sinking, grading is going down, and it's hard to find those cattle that'll grade, you know, 90% high choice and better. You know, there's just not that many of those cattle out there, and they really go after them if they can. And it's no secret that it's better in the northern plains than the southern plains. You know, the northern plains, you know, they've gained $5 or more this week on a live basis, you know, on those good cattle. And the southern plains, you know, maybe $1 or $2. They're sitting back here still begging for 138. Whenever we've got Packers aggressively trying to get cattle bought at 148 in the northern plains. You cannot tell me it's not because they sell more cattle negotiated in the northern plains. There's more cattle in loose hands. The Packers know that to get those cattle, they have to go out and bid on the cattle. And so, you know, whenever you have negotiated trade and you have some leverage because you trade 30 to 50% of of the cattle that are sold each week negotiated, then you have a better way to achieve that market. You know, down in the Texas where they trade 7 or 8%, and in Kansas 12 or 13%, yeah, you don't have much leverage, and you're going to suck hind tit, and you're going to be on the bottom end of a $10 price range on a live fed cattle price, which we never ever see. But you know, I tell you who's frustrated is the guys that are feeding cattle, sending cattle to these commercial feedlots. They're sending cattle there, and they could have sent them to a Nebraska lot, but they sent them to a Kansas lot, and they don't have any leverage, and they can't achieve those prices for those cattle feeders. That's who's frustrated. And I've talked to a lot of guys this week that says, you know, the worst thing in this industry is these big corporate feedlots in the Southern Plains. That they are the worst thing going on in this industry right now. They're supplying all these packers in the Southern Plains with their needs. They're not participating in the negotiated trade, and so we have no leverage in the Southern Plains. And you know, and custom cattle feeders and the few that sell negotiated, they can't achieve the decent prices. You know, $10 a hundred. That's a lot of money there. You know, $150 a head. What do you think? You know, so what do you think, you know, the guys are going to do? Next time, whenever they have a decision to make, they're going to send their cattle to a Nebraska feedlot or an Iowa feedlot that can sell their cattle cash and participate in negotiated trade. And I tell you what, I hope that's what happens. You know, the Kansas Livestock Association, Texas cattle feeders fighting this Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act tooth and nail, just sucking up to your corporate feeders who are sucking up to the packers, and they're all scared to death of the packers. They'll all tell me or anybody else in a private conversation, man, we hope y'all get something done on this Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. That would help for the guys that are negotiating to get us a better base price. They'll tell you that in private. But you know, whenever they're talking out on social media or just to the market media or ag media in general, they'll say, "Oh, we don't want that. We don't want the government telling us what to do with our cattle." It's not you. It's the onus is on the packer. So if you've got cattle in loose hands, and the packers know that, they're going to come to you. I know several sale barns that are going to start a fat cattle auction in the Southern Plains if this bill goes through. Price transparency. They've got several hundred or a few thousand fat cattle in a sale barn down here that are in loose hands. That will help me achieve my minimum obligation, this Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. If we get this deal done, if I'm a packer, I think I'll go to the sale barn and I'll bid on those cattle and I'll buy them and I'll satisfy my minimum requirement. You know, that's the way we sell feeder cattle. That's why the market moves so fast. That's why we don't complain about our feeder cattle market. We don't sit around and whine about it all the time. We have competition. We have price discovery. And you know, you guys that won't do it or won't get in there and support it, you know, it's how do you look yourselves in the mirror? Honestly, how do you look yourselves in the mirror when you don't think competition and price discovery and transparency is the best way to sell your product? And you go out and preach against something that's going to help that? Give me a break, guys. But, you know, I talk to several people, of course, all the time, but this week especially, you know, I talked to a friend of mine and feeds cattle and said, you know, Nebraska feedlot told him, he said the packers kept calling wanting cattle, you know, price me some cattle, we need some cattle. I don't have any show list. My show list is gone. You cleaned that show list up the last couple of weeks. I don't have any cattle for sale. Well, they come out there. They're driving out there. They don't do that in the Southern Plains. They drive out to the feedlot and they drive around and they find a pen out there that they think is close enough to being finished. And they said, what about these cattle here? And the feedlot guy, this happened on Wednesday. The feedlot manager says, those cattle are not due to go on the show list for another 30 days. Well, we like those cattle. Can we buy them? Well, I'll call the owner and see if he's interested. What do you want to give? I'll give you $1.48 for some cattle that aren't due to hit the show list for 30 days, people. You know, he asked the owner, he said, want to sell those cattle at $1.48? Market could come up a little bit. He says, hell, the cost of gain on those cattle right now at the end of their feeding period is probably $1.60 or $1.70. Hell yeah, I'll sell them. You know, that's the way this deal is supposed to work. So the way it's supposed to work. You gotta realize that and do things that help promote that trade. Box beef cutout values. I mean, what am I talking about? Let's talk about the board on Wednesday. June live cattle futures up 235 at 137.55. August up 272 at 136.80. Back months on live cattle futures up 20 to up 207. And that's heavy on the more nearby. August feeder cattle up $1.97 at 173.27. September up 175 at 175.10. Back months on feeder cattle futures up 55 cents to up $1.52. Look at your grains, kind of mixed. Corn is up 5 3/4 cents, settling end of normal trading hours at 7.74. Beans down 4.34 or 4 3/4 at 16.93 3/4. Kansas City hard red winter wheat down 9 cents at 11.33 1/4. Your fat cattle trade, you know what traded is what was ripe. Because, I mean, these guys are so green, not just current, but green in the Northern Plains. They don't have any cattle for sale. You know, and then the guys in the Southern Plains frustrated because they're $10 back. Well, when you're not participating in trade, how do you expect to get what the guys that are participating get? Colorado didn't have any confirmed sales. They've only sold 1,700 for the week. Iowa had 2,000 head of confirmed sales on Wednesday, 20,600 for the week so far, which is more than they've been trading the last couple of weeks. But live sales in Iowa, 145 to 146, but they've just about cleaned them. There's not many cattle to sell there. Dress price in Iowa confirmed on Wednesday at 230. So the Northern Plains is mostly $5 higher this week, live basis, and $5 to $6 higher dressed. Nebraska, there's a lot more feedlots there, and there were more cattle to find that were well finished. 4,500 head confirmed on Wednesday, 31,600 head for the week. Live sales in Nebraska, 145 to 148. I know there was some 149, and I even heard of some 150 late in the afternoon to some regionals. But 145 and 148, and 148 was majors, guys. Major big four packers bidding on cattle that they think are finished enough and likely not even ready to hit the show list yet. But dress sales in Nebraska confirmed on Wednesday, 230 to 236. Kansas only about 500 head and only 4,100 for the week in Kansas. Remember last week they didn't sell hardly in Kansas till real late in the week, and still less than half what they normally sell. But live sales in Kansas from 138 to 139. Texas only a load of cattle confirmed, 4,700 head for the week, and the only price was 138 when they're selling them for 148 just north of there, guys. But box beef cutout values were lower. Choice cuts down 122 at 268.22. Selects down $1.14 at 245.68. Your slaughter, pretty good clip, but not as aggressive as the big week last week. Not yet. Could have a pretty good Saturday. Actually, last Saturday was not that big, but they were just so aggressive all through the week that we had a monster week. But so far up through Wednesday, 368,000 harvested this week, 9,000 less than last week at this time, 8,000 more than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. I was coming back from Ogallala, Nebraska, where I gave a presentation on Tuesday night, and was able to stop and see my friends at the Benjamin Ranch, which is west of Lyman, Colorado. And I've been going to stop by and see them. Glenn Benjamin, he's a Western Video rep, and he and I had gotten acquainted at several of the Western Video sales and meetings, and I said when I was in that country I was going to stop and see him, and by God, got to do it on Wednesday. We had a nice visit. Went out and looked at some of his cattle. He runs a few hundred head of cattle on that ranch and several hundred head of antelope. That does have a little trouble getting those caught and sold and marketed though. But I had a good visit with Glenn Benjamin, his brother, and their mother were there, and her mother is well into her 80s and watches feeder flash every morning. So I thought that was fantastic. So I got a real big kick out of meeting their mother there. But Glenn and Lee, I enjoyed the visit with them, and like to do that kind of stuff when I get the opportunity. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DV auction late in the day on Wednesday, sitting at 162.16, up 81 cents. And you look at the average weights. Now it take them from 7 to 899 pounds, but you know, sometimes the average weight fluctuates. The average weight's all the way up to 810 pounds, averaging 162.16, 7-day moving average on all those steers reported to Cattle Market Central up through the middle 12 states. You know, CME's dragging back behind. Come on, little fella, you know, it's sitting at 160.18, the last available, but that real-time index is much more reliable and always up to date and current anytime you look at it. Talk about your big sales on Wednesday. OKC West, El Reno, Oklahoma, 6,800 head. Feeders, $3 to $5 higher. Light test of calves on Tuesday, steady to weak. Look at the automated marker report from Cattle Market Central. Look at your best tested weights, and this is just on the Wednesday sale. But 757 head of your 7-weight steers in El Reno, average 759, with a weighted average price on all those 7-weight steers of 161.58. 1,462 head of 8-weight steers in one sale barn, El Reno, Oklahoma. Average 855 and the weighted average price on all those 8-weight steers, not the hand-picked ones, all of them, 157.36. 877 head of 7-weight heifers, average 736 with a weighted average price on the 7-weight heifers in El Reno of 154.5. Dodge City, Kansas, about 1,500 head there. The comparisons on the feeders were $2 to $6 higher, not many lighter weight calves. Big stick out sale of heifers at Dodge City, 69 head of feeder heifers weighed 731 at 159.85. Big heifer quote. How about some individual quotes around the circuit? Springfield Livestock Marketing Center, and my friends down there, Josh Ford, give me a heads up on that, and I found it in Cattle Market Central. But right there in Springfield, Missouri, out on I-44, good sale there. They sold 60 head weaned black calves, steer calves there, weighed 626 at $193. Big time quote on Wednesday morning there. Kimball Livestock Exchange in Kimball, South Dakota sells 63 head, more than a load, 1,007-pound steers, warmed up big feeding steers at 162, guys. 162 on steers weighing over a grand. How about your best quote that I saw anywhere on Wednesday? National Beef Wire top quote from the day from one of our high volume sales, OKC West, El Reno, Oklahoma. They had one hell of a sale there. My friend, the auctioneer, John Cooper, he gave me a heads up on these earlier in the day, and then I found them in Cattle Market Central too. El Reno, Oklahoma, OKC West, El Reno Livestock Market, 54 head, 913-pound steers, bring $172. That's your feeder flash for Thursday.